So today I'm going to be talking about the alphabet agencies. Quick introduction, these were introduced in the New Deal by FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, from 33 to 35 in the first New Deal, and from 35 to 37 in the second New Deal. And these were just a series of organizations and administrations set up to try and improve the American economy after the Great Depression and the Wall Street crash and the Great Depression. They were their aims were quite different and were basically a way to not only boost FDR's popularity, but also, apart from helping the American economy, to make sure that the country was moving away from Republicans like Hoover, who did introduce quite a few policies but weren't that successful. But FDR did, and FDR, a Democratic candidate, managed to secure the presidency in 32, 36, which by the way was the biggest landslide in presidential history, in 40, and then 44. He won the election again, but died soon after taking office. So let's get started. I'm just going to warn you, there are a lot of letters. First of all, the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authorization. Well, this organization covered 7 states, and it was essentially an organization that made dams, possibly based on the Hoover Dam by Hoover. Well, they built 33 dams. And why did they do it? Why did they do this? Well, it was to provide cheap electricity, and eventually it did become the biggest producer of electricity in the U.S. It improved the land and helped build new towns and regulate the river. Although there was this one town that they made called Norris. That was a bit because no black people were allowed to live there. So yay New Deal, but there was still a racial segregation. Then is FERA. It's the Federal Emergency Relief Administration. It was essentially a package of $500 million to help Americans, as well as setting up soup kitchens and provide clothing, schools, and employment. So, just relief, just try to make it better for the people living there. And this still displayed how unequal American society was, as 30% of black people living in America still relied on charity. Then is the NRA or the NIRA. It's not the same as the National Rifle Administration, which I think is the current NRA. It's different. This is the National Industrial Recovery Administration, and it basically worked to improve workers' wages and increase prices of factory goods. So to increase the production and lifestyle of those working in factories. Because that was an essential part of the economy, and without factories, the economy could not recover. It helped improve working conditions because, of course, in order to have a happy time at the workspace, you need to have good working conditions in order to be more productive, So it worked on improving working conditions by limiting working hours to stop overworking, minimum wage. So, it may seem counterproductive at first because, the economy was destroyed. So by setting up minimum wage, it would be spending more money. Well, actually, by setting up minimum wage, people would be paying more, so they could buy more stuff. So actually, that money they paid the workers, it would go back to the American government. It would allow trade unions, again, to improve the workers' life, and ban child labor. This was rather than being because of economic reasons, it was because of ethical reasons, because you really shouldn't have a child working in a factory. Forget economic circumstances, you just shouldn't have a child operating that kind of machinery. And if you were a business that complied with the NRA, you could use a Blue Eagle logo. And if you were living in America during the 1930s and you saw a business or whatever with this Blue Eagle logo, you knew these were actually working to improve working conditions. These had a partnership with the American government, and they were actually a really good place to shop. Is these really contributed to the American economy, although you could still shop in other businesses and do other things, but it was recommended that you supported those which had the political logo. And by that, like that sense, it just encouraged more businesses to partner with the NRA, so more people would go to their shops because they saw the Blue Eagle logo. The American government kind of hoped it would work like that, and it did, so that was good. Then the FCA. This is a really simple one. It's the Farm Credit Administration. That's the Farm Credit Administration, which gave loans to around 20% of farmers because they needed to stop overproduction, because overproduction was a huge problem, because they just made a lot of food prices went down, then many rotted, so that wasn't good. So by giving loans to farmers, it would help improve that part of the American economy. Then PWA, the Public Works Administration, it spent around $4 billion on employing skilled men, and these men were used to build dams, houses, schools, hospitals, sewage systems, basically improve the American infrastructure, which of course, to have a fully functioning economy, you need good infrastructure so society can properly function. So by employing skilled men, it would help improve this infrastructure, help these men find jobs. With those jobs, they would earn wages, and those wages, they would spend it back on other businesses, therefore improving the economy. Then the AAA, the Agricultural Adjustment Act. It paid farmers to produce less food. Like I said, it was a lot of overproduction. It was a huge problem for America, because I've already said this, but you produce too much, that food goes to waste. Also, the food prices drop down. It wasn't good. So this is so successful that from 1932, which was when FDR was elected president, to 1936, the second election of the FDR, the farmers' wages actually doubled. And through the AAA, they slaughtered 6 million piglets. Which you think, oh my god, they're wasting so much money, because that piglets are essentially money-making pigs. But actually, they did this to raise the prices of other remaining piglets, and therefore make more people spend money. So instead of getting, say, $5 per piece of ham, I don't know, you spend 10 because 6 million were killed. So you spend that much money, the farmer would get that money and spend it on other things, therefore promoting recovery in the economy. However, again, just another example of how America was still not in a good place of relating to racial equality. They didn't help Black sharecroppers. These are people who lived on farms and worked for a farmer. They still gained money. It wasn't slavery or anything. It was just they lived in the farms and they got paid to work there. But the AAA basically said, fire them. You work your land, not them. And a lot got fired, and it wasn't good for them because it didn't benefit. These people were part of the 30% that actually needed charity, and these people, that even if they wanted to move to a town, say Norris, they couldn't because they weren't allowed there. Then the CCC. I know, a lot of letters. This is called the Civilian Conservation Corps. Well, these was another, like the PWA, it gave jobs. These were jobs to men under 25, and they would move to government camps in the countryside, and they did manual labor, so say clearing land, planting trees, stuff they needed muscle for. And in return, these men, it wasn't a glorious job, but they did get clothing, food, and a small wage. Yeah, it was 1 hour a day, but that's nothing. Today, the minimum wage in America, I think it's $12 an hour. They're trying to raise it to $15. and this is $1 a day, which may seem like terrible, but compared to nothing a day, it was still something. So it was quite popular. From 1933 to 1942, which was the time the program run, 3 million men actually participated in this program. 3 million men. So like I just said, it was extremely popular. It was cheap labor. It didn't really cost that much for the American government because they just had to pay $1 a day per person. So not that expensive. And they got stuff done. So they did get stuff in return. And however, it wasn't it's not all amazing because only 200,000 were black, which again, it was good that they were allowed to work, but they were still segregated. They still had separate camps only for black people. And women couldn't work because they required muscle, and women can't work because they don't have the muscle. Anyway, then the CWA. The CWA, like the PWA and the CCC, gave jobs. It's called the Civil Works Administration, and it just gave short-term jobs. And it helped with 4 million employed. In the winter of 1933-1934, so just a short period of time, it focused on improving infrastructure, for example, building roads, like the PWA. That's kind of similar in that sense. But it was kind of useless. They're called boondogglers. I think those are like something like in shoes, which is not really useful. It's just there. It was a waste of taxpayers' money because they still had to pay these men to work. They just scared away pigeons, so they said, "Oh hi, yes, you are going to work with the CWA, and you need to go to this park, and you're going to scare away the pigeons. You're gonna get paid for it." Of course, a lot of people signed up. 4 million. They just did that. They just shoot away the pigeons, and also they actors put on free shows. They got paid to just put on free shows. Which, yes, it can be seen as a waste of taxpayers' money. However, it increased morale because it did show men thought they were being useful, and they kind of were, but not really. But it just gave them a purpose to keep on working hard, and it gave them a starting salary. And with that salary, they could buy stuff and go back into the economy, and that was the aim of this type of agency. Then you have Hulk, not Hulk like the Marvel character, but Hulk, the Homeowners Loan Corporation. Really easy. It loaned money, and it helped pay mortgages. Just like here, you know you need a house. You can't be living in those I forgot the name. In those shanty towns, you can't be living in those conditions. So we're gonna help you pay a mortgage. You're gonna have to pay it back eventually. We're gonna help you, and it did kind of work. Then came the Second New Deal. This was all from 33 to 35, right? And with the Second New Deal, there was still unemployment. The AAA and the NRA faced a lot of opposition. Many who didn't really like FDR thought these organizations you're using, they're unconstitutional. You should use others. You should not use others. You should not use them. You should use other methods. So FDR had a problem there. Some agencies ended, like the CWA, just winter of 33 to 34. So what would he do? And also, he kind of needed to get reelected, and he saw how popular these agencies were. So why not do more and get reelected? And it's a win-win. Win for the economy, win for the American people, and win for him. So he did a Second New Deal. He promised it in 35 and started putting it in place in 35, and then used it in his campaign. And 36, also of the election campaign, he had these policies in place. And then 37, when he was re-inaugurated as president for the second time, he continued promoting them. So one of the organizations in the Second New Deal is the WPA, the Work Progress Administration. This was 1935. It gave work to 2 million people a year. 2 million. So quite successful. I mean, you can't complain. Like the CWA and the PWA, it worked on infrastructure. It helped build public buildings, schools, bridges, tunnels, sewers, infrastructure. Because to have a functioning economy, you need a functioning society. To have a functioning society, you need good infrastructure. Then it planted trees, which not for global warming purposes, no. It was because of the Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl was because of poor agrarian practices in the countryside. There was a huge wave of dust. I forgot the actual measurements. I think it was huge, and it devastated the countryside. But with the WPA, they planted trees to prevent this from going into the countryside. Ended up planting over 1,600 kilometers of trees. Not a small number at all. Then they had a budget, obviously, it was government spending, and they used 7% of this budget for artists, writers, actors, musicians, the creative types. They needed to keep those who are creative working to improve morale and to for themselves to have a business, to have a living. So they used 7% of the budget to do this. And it installed the National Youth Administration for younger people, because they needed younger people involved and boost morale. Then the Wagner Act. This was passed in 1935, and it was basically, hey, we know you like trade unions, so we're going to support you with trade unions. Rather than what the Nazis did in 1935, 1933, which banned all trade unions and grouped people into one, the DAF. The Americans did the Wagner Act. It supported workers who want to form trade unions, prevented them from being sacked, and it also increased at the same time the power of said trade unions. This was called the Wagner Act because it was proposed by the Senator, Robert Wagner, and it was passed. Turned out to be quite successful, so win-win. Then the Social Security Act of 1935. Well, Social Security. This forms the base of what today's Social Security is in the US. Probably in Europe even. I don't know. It was based on the European Social Security to help the old, sick, and unemployed. Well, it gave a state pension to those over 65 because they couldn't work, so they had to keep on living, They can just let them die. So they gave state pension. For that money, they could buy stuff, put it back into the economy. I've already mentioned this. It gave support to handicapped people and mothers with dependent children, and it established an unemployment insurance scheme. Like those who were unemployed had kind of a safety net. Then the RA, the Resettlement Administration, in 1935, it was to help sharecroppers, tenants, and farm workers. Sharecroppers were left out by the AAA. So FDR was like, hey, let me just include them in another organization, the RA, and I can get their vote. Why didn't I do this before? Well, they helped 500,000 or 5 million families. I think it's 500,000 families to find better land and settle them. And it was so successful that it was replaced by another organization, also set up by FDR, called the FSA, the Farm Security Administration. In 1937, literally the same thing as the RA. It gave lands to sharecroppers, tenants, farmers to buy lands. It gave them loans to buy lands, and it set up labor camps for migrant farm workers. And it was just a safety net after the AAA failure, and the FSA again turned out to be a huge success. So that is the alphabet agencies, also called the alphabet soup, because there are a ton of letters. Let me just recap. It's the TVA, the FERA, NRA, FCA, PWA, AAA, CCC, CWA, HOG, WPA, Wagner Act, Social Security Act, RA, FSA. They are a ton of letters, and it's hard to remember them, but you just have to know them. And they were really successful, and this New Deal really, really, really helped the American economy and helped FDR's popularity. The guy got reelected a few more times. What actually got the U.S. out of the war, out of the Great Depression, was the war, but these certainly helped. Without these, I don't know if the U.S. would have even actually been able to participate in the war. So yeah, that is pretty much it. Those are FDR's alphabet agencies. So yeah, thank you for watching. Bye.